Told Pastor Chuck on Wednesday, I've got a new favorite hour of church life. And it's, I told you this, Tuesday at 10, where we sit right here like he said and we pray for you guys. And it's a great reminder for me that in the midst of all this doing in church, and we do a lot and we do a lot of good, sometimes I gotta just stop and let the God who can do so much more do his thing, and we just get out of his way. That's going to happen today. He's going to move out of his way and let his word speak. And this week might have been, Chuck, our longest list we've ever had. Which tells me that the list was far longer of people who didn't share prayer requests, who didn't feel comfortable or confident yet. And we covered you too. Let me just say this before we go further, because actually it's not in my notes, but it matters. The emotion you're feeling right now, confusion, anger, hurt, exhaustion, fear, doubt, whatever emotion you're feeling toward God right now, he made you to have those emotions. He can handle it. There's a whole book of the Bible in Psalms and a whole book in Job of men who wrote out of anger and fear and doubt and frustration, and they ended well. He can take it. Those requests we had, ranging from grandparents concerned about a grandchild at school, dealing with a friend or a family member who's in hospice right now, the possibility of someone going through cancer. And frustrations that God isn't speaking fast enough and clearing things up quick enough. One, he can take it. And two, I'm so glad you're here today. Go back in your life 2 or 10 years ago. Can you recall how you felt during those days of presidential elections? If you voted Democrat, how you felt in 2008 when the Democrat president took over the presidency, or how, if you voted Republican, how you felt in 2016 when a Republican president took office. Do you remember how you felt when it announced that they won? Do you remember how you felt? If your person won? It was probably this strange, intoxicating mix of relief and exhilaration. Relief that what you voted against was about to change, and hope that things were going to be different. Remember that feeling? That's exactly where this passage is. That's exactly what the crowds are feeling. Relief that something was about to change, and exhilaration that things were about to get better, because hope was hitting center stage as Jesus entered Jerusalem. It's going to be up here on the screen, that scripture text, Matthew 21. You can give you a second to get your apps out on your phone or in the Bible in front of you. Matthew 21, 1 through 11. Work with me on this, all right? As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethpage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, I want you to go to the village ahead of you, and at once you'll find a donkey tied there with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. And if anyone says anything to you, say, the Lord needs them, and that person will send them right away. This took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. Say to daughter Zion, see, your king comes to you riding on a donkey, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks on them for Jesus to sit on. And a very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, while others cut branches from trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went ahead of him and the crowds that followed him shouted, Hosanna, which means save us, to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, meaning, God, we trust this is the one you sent to save us. Hosanna in the highest heaven. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, who is this? The crowd answered, this is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee. Like the parade following the inaugural address. This is how the people were feeling. Hope was going to change everything in the form of Jesus. Now, if you've grown up in the church, you might have heard this every Palm Sunday, this passage read. And so nothing is odd to you about this. But this is the first time that you're hearing this text. I'm hoping that a few things just seem a little off, because they are. Few pieces that don't make a whole lot of sense. The first one that screams out at me, it told me something's wrong here, is when asked, who is this guy? The people don't say, this is Jesus the King. This is Jesus the prophet. Treating him as king. Calling him prophet. Something's missing. You know, every Sunday night we have a group called The Edge. It's young adults age 18 to 26-ish. They come to our house. We do dinner every Sunday night. And then madness breaks loose. We might play speed euchre for hours or killer Uno, which is dangerous. We might have a Bible study or do a service project or do a cooking challenge like Chopped. Talk about dangerous, is eating that stuff. About a year ago, well, and it doesn't seem to matter what we do. It's a group of 12 to 20 people just love being around each other. It's kind of fun. Now, about a year ago, we got in this phase during winter, a puzzle phase, where every stinking Sunday night we did puzzles. Combination of puzzles and listening to the Greatest Showman album over and over and over and over. But when you make puzzles, tell me if I'm right, there's always that guy. In my house, it was my dad. He was that guy you had to be careful of. He was going to sneak a puzzle piece. Somebody just elbowed that guy beside you. And his goal of that puzzle piece was to come in at the end and finish the puzzle. He did nothing the whole time but steal, just to say he finished the puzzle. Now at the Edge, we don't have that guy. We got those guys. Multiple guys. And their methods, their motives are far more sinister. I'm getting you saved today, boys. Their goal isn't to finish the puzzle. Their goal is to see that the puzzle never gets finished. Yeah. They will not sneak one piece, 2, 3, 4 pieces. And we're talking 3, 4, 5 guys. You got to keep one eye on the puzzle and one eye on these innocent guys who are trying to help slip pieces into their pocket. And you'd be shocked at where we find pieces the rest of the week around our house. In drawers, under candles. The best one, don't know how we found it, sitting on top of the speaker for our doorbell. You know what I'm talking about? Right beside your door, the little box that ding dong. They slipped one up there. How I found it, I don't know. Dirty rats. That's what you are. You better shrink back there, Keith Raymond. Yes, you are. Whoever's going to watch this video at home thinks I just called him Keith Raymond because you're hiding behind that video camera, aren't you? See, when you don't have all the pieces, you can typically find out, though, what's behind that piece, right? Because you look at the context, you look at the pieces around, and based on what you see around it, you can kind of tell what should be in that spot. Do you know that your mind works the same way when it comes to your vision? I thought this was true, and I wanted to check it just to verify before I spew lies to you. This is not a lie, this is true. Do you know, when it comes to peripheral vision, your eyes can't fully see what's in your periphery? You know that? It can only see shapes. But when it sends information to your brain, check this, is so great. Based on what the outlines of it as it sees, and based on your experience of what you have seen there or what should be there, your mind puts the rest of the pieces together so you really think you're getting the whole picture. But it's really a figment of your imagination because your eyes can't fully see it. It's taking your human experience and taking the pieces around the puzzle to fill in the gaps, and that's what your peripheral vision is. Isn't that crazy? It's crazy awesome, right? So when you have these missing pieces in your life that you can't quite all put together just by nature, you take your human experience, you take your common sense, and you can typically tell what's missing. But when it comes to God, it's a little more complicated because you're taking human finite experiences, human finite common sense to make sense of an infinite, uncommon God. And the space between a piece of a puzzle and the missing piece, the space between what is in my periphery and what's in front of me, is far shorter than the space between my understanding and God's. So when there are pieces missing, the chances of a distorted view of the big picture is far greater. So let's take some of these pieces from this story and try to make sense. These people saw a prophet. They said so. And they saw a king because they were treating him like a king. But what Jesus saw, what Jesus was actually Messiah. Let's get back into their mindset just a little bit, okay? When God created the Jewish nation as a kingdom, when he got King Saul to lead, he kind of created it like our United States government. We have 3 different branches to try to create some kind of checks and balances. He had 3 branches, actually 3 people. He had the king. The king's responsibility was to take care of providing for and protecting the material and the physical needs of the people he ruled over. There was also the prophet. Anytime there's a king, it's Bryson, it's kind of like Star Wars. Anytime there is a Sith, how many are there? 2, okay? Right there. Anytime there's a king, you always find a prophet. Always around. King David. When he slept with Bathsheba, had a child, or actually slept with Bathsheba, got her pregnant, had her husband killed, Nathan the prophet shows up. The prophet speaks on behalf of God to the people. When God has something to say and instruct the king, the prophet gets the word and tells the king. When God has something to say to the nation, God speaks to the prophet and he tells the nation. The prophet is the mouthpiece of God. But there's one more component, and that's priest. There's always a priest. The priest was the mouthpiece of the people to God. He was the one who offered the sacrifices, made the priestly prayers on behalf of the people, reconciling them with offering and sacrifice and prayer, reconciling the nation of Israel to the Creator God. Now, The king was the role to create social and political order. The people, like we talked about several weeks ago with Judas, they felt some serious Roman oppression. And as Pastor Chuck preached about a few weeks ago, they were also feeling some oppression by their own religious rulers when he talked about turning over tables. They'd walk in with their lamb, thought they had a good lamb, but the priest would say, I see a blemish, but you can buy one. It's like scalping tickets. You can buy another one at an inflated price. They felt oppression outside the church with their government and inside the church. To solve the outside the church problem with the government, you need a king to come in and liberate you. And if you want to problem solve inside the church, you need a prophet to speak to the leaders, to tell them what needs to be changed. But you see what's in common here. These people are longing for God to change somebody else. They wanted a prophet. They wanted a king. But that was the first missing piece. That was Jesus' position. The position of priest. Jesus was not just prophet or king, he was priest. The culmination of all three made him Messiah, the Savior of Israel. The priest was offering sacrifices of forgiveness, but rather than just being the high priest, Jesus became also the once and for all sacrifice to forever restore those people to God and to possibly restore your life back to our Creator God. When the puzzle surrounding the missing piece looks like it should be a prophet or a king in the spot that's missing, you start acting like the Jews who missed what Jesus really was. They were waiting for someone to come in and fix everything around them. They wanted peace, so they wanted to overthrow the Roman government and get them out of the way. They wanted peace in their church, so they wanted to come and fix the religious leaders. But what Jesus was doing, what Jesus was showing us, that he's not here to fix the surroundings. He's here to fix me. Peace begins with my heart, and then can potentially end with all hearts. Jesus is not waiting for us, not trying to come in and change everything around us to find peace. He says very clearly in John 16, listen, Jesus replied, do you really believe me? The time will come, and already is here, when all of you will be scattered. It's coming up, Good Friday. They all leave when Jesus gets arrested. But Jesus says, but the Father's with me, and I will not be alone. I've told you this so that you might have peace in your hearts because of me. While you're in this world, you will have to suffer. But cheer up. I've overcome the world. Here it is. Here's the hope that you're longing for. We're talking anger, fear, doubt, confusion, exhaustion, frustration towards God. We're waiting for something to change around us so we can find the peace that is evading us right now. And Jesus is saying, you're going to have problems, but that peace you're longing for is already sitting right here in front of you in my presence. The peace is found in the continual building of a lifelong relationship with the God who didn't just create, but the God who came to save. And when you find peace in the midst of your turmoil, there's a good chance your kids, or those in your home, might find peace in the midst of your turmoil. And then the ones your kids interact with, your spouse interacts with at work, at school, in your neighborhood, in your church, can find peace in the midst of your turmoil. The peace will start in my heart and can be there irregardless of whether or not things change around me. There's another problem in the story, though. Got to have more than one point, right? The people saw a steed, and Jesus is riding on a donkey. Ode to Shrek. I wonder if they went and made waffles. Kings don't ride donkeys. I bet you didn't know that. Kings don't ride donkeys. Kings ride white stallions. Noble, strong, victorious, authoritative, representative of the king himself. Noble, strong, victorious, authoritative, coming into the city. But a donkey is a vehicle for a long journey. And there's nothing pretty looking, nothing pretty smelling, and nothing pretty sounding about a donkey. That's the second missing piece. Jesus riding in on a donkey represented something, and that was his persona, and that was humility. Let me preface what I'm about to say, so you don't think I'm trying to jam in an illustration that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. On Tuesday morning, before our world just got rocked by Sarah's sudden death, I was in Melissa's office, and I was just throwing out things about this message. And I said, at this point, and she's sitting here and she's nodding. If you don't believe this, go find her afterwards, all right? I said, Melissa, the perfect example here is Sarah Osborne. So I'm not trying to jam in an illustration to honor somebody who's not here. She is the best example I knew and still know for this part of Jesus. Sarah was passionate about unborn children. She believed, as I do, that every life from conception through death, every life is priceless in the eyes of God. And she fought hard to see laws change. She'd write letters. She and her husband would tell us who to vote for to get these laws changed, but she didn't stop there. This is the Jesus part. She volunteered countless hours to Voice of Hope as vice president for a few years, but even more than that, not just as an officer, she met with young ladies to try to convince them that this life that they had inside them was priceless. To give them the tools that they might have felt like they didn't have or feel equipped to be a mother. Give them the tools to be a mom so that child had a chance to live. And beyond that, if that mother still didn't want that child, she saw that child through birth so that child could find an adoptive home. Sarah got what Jesus was trying to do. See, Jesus, through humility, was expressing a power under authority, follow me, as opposed to a power over authority. A king on a steed expresses power over authority. I will come in, I will conquer, and you will submit, or else. If Jesus was about power over authority, he'd have walked into the people of Israel, gotten rid of Rome, and herded them right back into the temple. Keep those sacrifices going. Stay in line with God. But he chose power under, which was developing a relationship which culminated in his sacrificial death so that we could have life now and forever. Sarah understood what Jesus did. She understood that changing a law might limit abortions. but it wouldn't guarantee changing people's hearts. You think I'm crazy? How many of you drive 35 miles per hour out here? There's a law, there's a sign. Do y'all drive 35? I mean, I do when I see the cop at Menards. Right? I've even asked my cousin-in-law, I said, Keith, how fast can I drive over the speed limit and be okay? You know what he did? Probably did. Shook his head, smiled, and punched me. He always punches me. I think it's in love. But he never gave me an answer. You know that law didn't change your hearts, because broken hearts will still break laws. Jesus came to heal the heart. In humility, lower himself below us, washing our feet, dying so we didn't have to die and find eternal life. So yes, we still fight to change laws, but we fight to change hearts as if the laws will never change. You got any Facebook users here? Don't raise your hand. You may not want to yet. I wanted you to just process for a second your political posts. And the one I've seen the most lately is this RV levy that's going on. The posts have been toxic. When you make posts about laws, are you posting with Jesus' power under authority? Nurturing relationships, which really probably can't be done on Facebook. Nurturing relationships in the hopes of changing their hearts that they might see your way? Or do you tend to use Jesus' power, the world's power over authority? Using shame and guilt and belittling to change a person's action. Yet Jesus was all about changing hearts, which did lead to change actions. Actions that lasted a whole lot longer. So let's start putting the pieces of this puzzle together, all right? Of this Palm Sunday puzzle. This is day one when this takes place of the Passover celebration. It's an 8-day festival. Jerusalem at this time was approximately 20,000 people. But this week, everybody converged on Jerusalem, where historians say that it would go from 20,000 people for that week, kid you not, to 150,000 people for the week. Imagine Marion, Ohio, 40,000 people in the city, and the popcorn festival was a week long. And for an entire week, it went from 40,000 people to 300,000 people in Marion. That's 5 times the amount of people that live in the county in the city now. This was a huge celebration. Tens of thousands of people in this city seeing Jesus come into the city. This is the source of the celebration, the intoxicating mix of relief and exhilaration all coming together in the midst of this Passover celebration, which celebrates the liberation of the Israelites from Egypt thousands of years before with Moses. So it stands to reason that the people who were there celebrating Jesus just 3 or 4 days later would have been the same ones in the crowd yelling, "Crucify him." What changed? It's the missing pieces. Because when you don't get the full image of God, it not only distorts your view of God, it distorts your view of your circumstance and yourself as well. when you see Jesus as king, prophet on a donkey, you miss it. It distorts your view. This is the most rotten looking penny I've ever seen. If I see this on the street, my kids probably pick it up. I'm not going to hurt my back, because this can't buy me a thing. When you see Jesus through a distorted view with missing pieces and miss the big picture of what he's doing, you might view yourself as though this is all God sees you're worth. Why aren't you acting? What are you doing? It's no wonder you give up on him. I get it. It also distorts your view of your life. We're reminded this week how short it is and can be. Even if you're 90 in the breadth scope of everything, it goes so fast, so I'm told. If you only have this long to live, and God's not acting fast enough, not changing things quick enough, I get it. I get why you feel like giving up. Tell you the truth, the night of my son's accident, if my wife wasn't sitting outside the door after I told them to amputate my son's leg and said, this is where the rubber meets the road, this is where the faith we talk about has got to start working for us, I'm not sure how I would have responded out of my hurt and anger and sadness toward my God. When you don't see the big picture, it distorts how you see you. It distorts how you see your life. If my life is that short, why would I hang on to Jesus for any longer than I have to? If I'm worth that little, what do I have to lose trying something else? It's no wonder that when standing before Pilate, when the crowds who had just celebrated Jesus, looking for a king to overthrow Rome, there stood the person who exemplified Rome, Pontius Pilate, with Jesus beside him in chains. When are you going to act? Crucify him. They long for a prophet to come in and change the minds of religious rulers. But it's those religious rulers that are standing in the place of authority before them. Jesus is in chains, not them. Say something, Jesus. Prophesy. Change their minds, but they're in position of power. Jesus, I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm confused. I'm oppressed. Do something. And he stands there silent in humility and says nothing. Crucify him. If this is all Jesus has to offer, if this is all we are, if this is all we have, I understand now. I understand why we pull out of our prayer lives so fast. When out of exhaustion, it doesn't seem like God's working to hold our family together. I get it. Why we are so quick to let go instead of holding on to his word, withdrawing from his word, when the plans that we read are supposed to happen aren't panning out. I get it. I get it that we consider quickly ditching church when it's not giving me the answers to life's questions that I need. And I get it why the crowd and why you and I might so quickly say, crucify him. I'll move on to something else. when a chapter of your life's book of dreams gets shut so quickly and so mercilessly. A church, when you add the missing pieces, when you add Jesus' position as priest, reconciling humans to him with the ultimate once and for all sacrifice, when you add the piece of Jesus' persona of humility that's not coming in just to crush the world, but to love the world into a conscious choice, a decision to be restored to him, it changes things. Because surely no infinite God would die just to save a few years for me. Surely no perfect human would die or think this imperfect human was worth just a penny and die for me. When we see the puzzle complete of Palm Sunday, adding the piece of his position, adding the piece of his persona, adding the priest and adding humility, we see what God's working toward. And that's this perfect picture of eternity. Yeah. He wouldn't die if this is all you're worth. Because when God looks at you, he sees far more. Not just 1 penny's worth. 10,000. I'd have done gold coin dollars, but come on. You get the point. The difference is infinite. When Jesus broke through this world to us who are just in distress, understandably, because we can't see in his eyes, we can't get in his mind, and we're distressed over this little short life. He's not just working to solve this. He's working towards this. He's working to give you strength to overcome temptation here and give you the freedom to never deal with it again here. He's giving you comfort here to withstand the sickness of your spouse, of your children, to withstand the oppression you feel by your people at work or maybe a parent, so you can live in complete comfort with him here. You get this perspective? He cares just as much about this to get us to this. He'll give you the strength to keep fighting your injustices till you get to the place where you see glimpses of his kingdom come and his will done here. So we can see every life valued when his kingdom has come and his will is done in heaven as we long for it to be done here on earth. And he'll give you the strength to keep praying for that kid and keep pursuing that spouse, so that even when this time is done, you get all this with your Creator and them. It's amazing how a few pieces change everything. And there's one more piece to this. I also believe God has given us the gift of Dayspring, of His church. That when you come to the end of your rope and you're barely holding on to this existence that you have, you're ready to give up, to crucify your relationship with God. That He brings along these people to grab hold of you with one arm and grab your rope for you and hold on tight to Jesus for you till you find the strength once again to grip onto your God. And you find you're gripping on once again to forever. Don't be afraid of what you're feeling. Jesus Himself cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? If you can, hold on. If you can't, stay here and pray that God brings someone into your life to hold on to while you can't. In Dayspring, you start praying now that God shows you who you need to grab onto, who may not feel like they have the confidence or the love or the trust to cry out to you, to have you hang on to them. Pray that God shows you who needs you to grab them and hold on to Jesus for them so they can find the strength to not just survive this, but receive this. Because I know whom I have believed and am persuaded that He is able to keep that which I've committed unto Him against that day.